CEO laughs at a waitress until she exposes an incredible 500 million contract in a touching turn. Sarah stood with her back against the diner's counter, the familiar sound of sizzling bacon and clattering dishes swirling around her like a comfort blanket. The morning sun poured through the window, illuminating her vibrant curls, but her heart weighed heavy. The reality of serving plates piled with grease to customers who barely glanced up felt like an unending loop. Dreams of completing her business degree flickered in her mind, but with each passing day, those ambitions felt further away as she lived paycheck to paycheck. If only someone could see beyond her apron and smile, if only they understood her potential. Then he walked in. Jack, the CEO, clad in an expensive suit, breezing through the door with his entourage. A harsh laugh resonated as he spotted her, the waitress. When she approached to take his order, her voice trembled slightly. "I've always wanted to run my own business," she trailed off, and the laughter erupted. "With that kind of ambition? You're kidding." His condescending tone shriveled her hope, and for a fleeting moment, she imagined crumpling beneath the weight of his dismissal. But instead, a fire ignited within her. Was going to be another voice drowned out by the sound of arrogance? Days later, Sarah found herself alone in the diner after the morning rush, washing dishes while her thoughts danced chaotically around her future. Her gaze caught the edge of a newspaper article on the countertop about a 500 million contract that her diner could vouch for. The idea felt absurd, someone like her managing business deals. Yet the notion gripped her, an inexplicable urge to prove Jack wrong and rise above his jeering laughter. Her mother had sacrificed everything to send her to school, and she couldn't let that legacy slip away unnoticed. As she buried herself in the complexities of proposals and vendor relationships, anxiety grew like shadows in her mind. Late nights turned into early mornings, leaving her exhausted but driven. Her hands shook as she drafted pitch after pitch, creeping doubts whispering that she wasn't cut out for this world dominated by men in suits and boardroom politics. Could she really carry the weight of her family's dreams while balancing this newfound aspiration? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but the moment Jack casually strolled into the diner again, she felt the heat rise in her chest. He was oblivious, still throwing insults like confetti, not realizing she was there to establish her place in a world that constantly ignored her. "You're still here?" he chuckled. Yet this time, she confronted him head-on, not as a waitress but as the strong woman she was becoming. She was tired of being invisible. In the boardroom, when that door opened, her palms would sweat, the presentation trembling with potential as she faced Jack again. This time, he wouldn't see a mere waitress, he'd witness fierce determination filled with bottled-up ambition ready to explode. As she prepared her argument, she saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, but as she opened her mouth to deliver her vision, the moment fractured with the insistent buzzing of his phone. The screen lit up, a headline flashing that could change everything. Anxiety knotted in her stomach, the collision of dreams and reality crackling in the air. Would he see her? Or would she remain just another empty laugh lost in the echoes of indifference? The tension hung thick, a fierce battle of fate poised on the edge. As the buzzing persisted, Sarah felt each vibration echoing the anxiety clenching her heart. The sight of the phone, Jack's lifeline to the world that had always dismissed her, tightened the knot in her stomach. She was poised on the edge of revealing her plan, ready to turn the laughter into astonishment, yet the moment felt dangerously fragile, as if a breath could shatter it all. When Jack finally glanced at his phone, Sarah seized the chance to control the narrative. "You may laugh at my ambitions," she said, her voice steady but her heart racing, "but I'm here to challenge your perception. This diner is ready to secure that 500 million contract. I know it's worth." There was an energy in her tone that she hadn't tapped into before, a blend of indignation and empowerment. A flicker of surprise flashed across Jack's face before he masked it behind a confident smirk. "What makes you think you can handle it?" he shot back, crossing his arms, skepticism radiating from him like heat. This wasn't merely a question, it was a dismissal wrapped in a challenge, and it forced her to dig deeper. In that instant, Sarah realized she wasn't just fighting for her vision, she was fighting for her identity. To step outside the confines of a waitress and into a space of strategic negotiation, she had to confront the skepticism directed at her. "I know more than you think," she replied, summoning the countless nights she had spent poring over logistics and contracts, preparing, learning, and growing in her knowledge. "I'm ready to take this diner beyond the daily breakfast crowd. I want to show you my plan." Sarah's tone shifted, growing more assertive. She could feel the power within her starting to rise. Jack leaned back, intrigued now, though his expression remained inscrutable. "Okay, show me," he said, a challenge laced in his tone. Did he truly mean it? Did he want to see her vision, or was this his way of cementing her defeat? Sarah felt the weight of expectation thicken the air between them. Yet, the exhilaration of an opportunity surged through her like the rush of a freshly brewed cup of coffee. As she began to detail her proposal, laying out strategies for partnerships and leveraging the diner's unique position in the local community, she noticed the subtle shift in Jack's demeanor. His smirk faded, replaced by a contemplative seriousness. Each point she made resonated with a truth unacknowledged before. The laughter that had once stung now transformed into something tangible, a shared moment of realization, but just as Sarah felt the thrill of potential success, hesitation suddenly crept back in. Doubts lingered at the edges of her thoughts, sharp and intrusive. Could she truly pull this off? What if the reality of the boardroom was still too big a leap from the diner? Could she risk everything, only to fail before Jack, the man who had belittled her dreams? The internal conflict churned rage and desire within her, blurring the lines between fear and ambition. "You're right to question me," she stated firmly. "But the greatest risk comes from never trying." For a fleeting moment, both confrontation and hope hung in the balance between them, two worlds colliding. Jack's expression softened as if he finally recognized the passion layered beneath her resolve. But then, with a slight shake of his head, he extinguished that flicker just as quickly. "Let us see your plan," he said, though the weight behind his words suggested an impending challenge. Sarah knew this was just the beginning of a mountain she had to climb. The realization sunk in that the battle ahead would not just be against Jack's skepticism but also against her own fears and doubts. Steeling herself, she prepared to face the complexities of the business world, the negotiations, the boardroom politics, and the weight of both her family's legacy and her own dreams. But as she presented her ideas, there's a startling moment when Jack pulls out another document, something that appeared to be a threat to her proposal, and the stakes escalated. Could she pivot once more to turn this challenge to her advantage? The tension coiled tightly around her as she glared at the document, knowing the next move was hers to make. What a risk it would be! But finally, she was ready to face consequence and opportunity all at once. The atmosphere thickened like the weight of a storm cloud as Sarah scanned the neatly typed document Jack had just revealed. It bore terms she hadn't expected, such as preferred vendor agreement and exclusivity clause. Her heart raced, each word resonating with potential catastrophe, yet it felt as if the paper was also an invitation to deepen her understanding, to refine her response. She realized the stakes had risen exponentially. Jack's gaze bore into her, searching for traces of fear, symptoms of retreat. But Sarah couldn't afford to give him the satisfaction of backing down. The internal tempest swirled inside her, but her external demeanor remained calm. She had rehearsed her poise countless times. After all, this diner embodied generations of sweat and dedication. People had fought for less. "Let us clarify," she stated, determination seeping into each syllable. "What exactly does this document imply for our proposition?" She could see Jack's confidence shift slightly, as though surprised by her insistence to confront the challenge directly. "It means," he replied slowly, "that we'll have to negotiate more than just the diner's potential. You'll need to ensure we meet the performance requirements specified here, and demonstrate that we can deliver results. His words hung in the air, dense and unyielding. Yet, this was an unexpected opening. While others might falter, Sarah felt an ember of clarity ignite within her. Then let us break down what those performance requirements entail, she responded, now fueled by a sense of urgency. I'm not here simply to dream, Jack, I'm here to strategize. The conversation morphed from a potential confrontation into a budding collaboration, each of them now probing the depths of what was possible. The buzz of the diner faded into a distant hum as the two of them leaned over the table, discussions about projections and market trends flowing between them like an intricate dance. Sarah's mind buzzed with calculations she'd memorized, insights from late-night research sessions surfacing one after another. She addressed the exclusivity clause with a perspective neither of them had entertained before. What if we expand the offer to include a community-driven campaign? Leveraging local suppliers. The idea took root. Her courage felt sharper as she proposed how a relational approach could strengthen their position, how they could craft partnerships that not only met demands, but also wove the diner deeper into the fabric of the community. Jack's brow furrowed, signaling his contemplation, and Sarah understood that her words were striking him. That's an intriguing angle, he mused, a hint of openness seeping through his skepticism. She could hear the gears in his mind turning, the challenge becoming less about tearing her ambitions down and more about how they could build something formidable together. But as the dialogue continued, uncertainty still lurked, entangled with the excitement she felt. Could she sustain this momentum? Was she willing to put all of herself on the line for an outcome dependent on the shifting tides of Jack's decisions? Every grain of doubt swirled into the foundation of her confidence. She didn't merely need Jack's approval, she had to believe in herself and her vision more than anyone else around the table. As the evening wore on, the stakes were becoming clearer. But so were her capabilities. She could sense moments where clarity led to deeper negotiations, where her intuition transformed from a whisper into a clear voice. With each idea she presented, she built bridges. She was no longer just a waitress dreaming of far-off possibilities. With each word, she was a force pressing to reshape the diner's future. Yet, amidst the exchange of ideas, uncertainty lurked beneath the surface. There was a deeper agenda at play in Jack's demeanor. Just as she felt the exhilaration of possibility surging like an electric current, she sensed a hesitation from him, a calculated pause. What was he hiding? What layers of risk were still enveloped in this proposition? A small part of her dared to wonder if Jack would still laugh when she delivered an unexpected counter of her own. With a determined breath, she leaned forward, ready to press for the next step in what could be a pivotal moment in her life. The next move was crucial, and as she prepared to unveil her counter-strategy, an important question hung in the air. Could she finally flip the script in a way that would compel Jack to acknowledge not just her potential, but to re-evaluate his own beliefs about her entirely? The tension swirled around Sarah like a thick fog, intoxicating and disorienting. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribcage, each beat urging her to take action. Jack's calculated composure acted as a counterweight to her rising ambitions, and she recognized that this moment wouldn't just shape their discussion, it could define her path forward. Rallying her thoughts, she spoke, her voice steadier than she felt. What if we position ourselves not merely as a diner, but as a community hub? Think about the potential buzz around local events like everything from farmers markets to cooking workshops, all showcasing local produce. As the words rolled off her tongue, she could almost see the ideas erupting, vibrant and alive. This was not just about food, this was about building a brand, and she wanted Jack to visualize that. Jack's expression shifted, interest igniting in his eyes. How do you want to approach that? We'll need a timeline and some metrics. There it was her chance to recalibrate their conversation. This was not just a response to the exclusivity clause anymore, this was her opportunity to infuse his corporate pragmatism with her passion for the diner. Confident in her newfound focus, she met his gaze head-on. Let us create a timeline that outlines our strategic initiatives while incorporating performance metrics based on customer engagement and sales. We can integrate local suppliers into our menu and monitor how that impacts our monthly growth. She could feel her heart racing, excitement glimmering beneath the surface. Each word was a step toward solidifying her role and her input. For a moment, Jack hesitated, as if weighing the potential of her proposal against the traditional frameworks he'd relied upon. It was then that Sarah realized this wasn't just negotiation, it was a duel of ideas in which she needed to fight not only for her vision but also for Jack's buy-in. "What else do you have?" he asked, skepticism still clinging to his voice. In that instant, her resolve firmed. "Let us bring social media into the equation. We'll utilize local influencers to build our brand, showcase our community partnerships and authentic cuisine." She could see Jack's wheels turning, the possibilities unfolding like petals of a flower. The flicker of intrigue in his eyes gave her a thrill of hope, reinforcing the burgeoning confidence within her. She paused for effect, her next words carefully chosen. "And if we can prove that our approach drives sales, we can negotiate terms of the exclusivity, allowing us room to manipulate vendor options." Jack leaned back, processing, and for a fleeting moment, doubt crept into Sarah's heart. Was she asking for too much too soon? Perhaps Jack was still anchored in his old ways, unwilling to pivot. But she quickly banished the thought with a wave of determination. This was no longer just about the diner, it was about her identity, her growth. Just as she sensed the conversation shifting, Jack cut through with an unexpected query. "What happens if it fails?" His practical nature punctured her optimism. "If you can't meet those performance metrics, what is your plan then?" Sarah felt as if the ground beneath her had opened up. First, there was disbelief. How could he question the potential? But then she felt it, a rush of adrenaline, a recognition of the significant opportunity laid bare. "If it fails," she replied, her voice steady, "then I've learned invaluable lessons, Haven Ti. This diner has taught me that success isn't guaranteed, but resilience is. I'm willing to adapt and pivot as needed." The words flowed, unpolished yet true. It was a revelation that not only revealed her understanding of failure but asserted her fundamental strength. Jack's challenging gaze softened slightly, curiosity woven into his expression. "Resilience is great, but what else do you bring to the table? Why should I trust you with a venture that carries high stakes?" His doubts were confronting her, stripping her down, but she welcomed the challenge. She leaned in, the heat of her advocacy igniting. "Because I understand the people who come through those doors. I know this community, their stories, their preferences. This isn't just a business to me, it's personal. If I falter, it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's the people I've served." Jack paused, studying her, and she could almost see the gears in his mind shifting. The silence stretched between them, thick with unvoiced tensions and emerging connections. What would he say next? Her heart hammered, anticipation coiling tightly within her. Would he see the worth in her proposition, or would he allow his doubts to sink them both? The next moment could tip the scale, and as she prepared to engage even further, she felt an undeniable surge of resolve. This was only the beginning, and she intended to make it count. The question settled heavily in the air: could she really convince him to embrace her vision, or would Jack's reservations extinguish the flame of hope she had ignited in this crucial negotiation? Jack's expression transformed, a mix of contemplation and skepticism tightening his features. She sensed the weight of his deliberation pressing down on them both. The air felt electrically charged, and Sarah was acutely aware that the outcome of this conversation might alter her life irrevocably. "Your passion is evident, Sarah," he replied slowly, "but passion alone won't make it work. You need a plan that's not just a string of ideas, it needs depth, something that will convince stakeholders." The challenge simmered on his lips, a reminder that conviction must be paired with strategy. Her heart raced, not with fear but with fuel. This was the moment she'd been preparing for, her chance to showcase not just her vision but also her capacity to execute it. She gathered her thoughts and took a breath, feeling a rush of confidence. "How about a campaign that's both digital and local? We can employ community feedback to iterate our menu based on preferences that emerge. Perhaps even a loyalty program that rewards engagement, building a customer base that feels connected and valued." Jack's brow furrowed for a brief moment. And the financials? Without projections, these remain abstract wishes. His practicality loomed before her like a wall, but she was undeterred. We can establish baseline metrics for each initiative. For instance, if we launch a local influencer campaign, we can analyze engagement rates, foot traffic increase, and correlated sales for 3 months post-launch. If we fall short, we pivot. It's a living strategy. There it was, the seed of a more comprehensive plan taking root in her mind. With every word, Sarah felt a flicker of empowerment. She needed more than resilience, she required audacity, continuity in her approach. And what of the exclusivity clause? Jack pressed, his interest visible beneath layers of skepticism. Is this really a feasible route for you? A pulse of adrenaline coursed through her. She leaned forward, embodying the conviction she felt despite the uncertainty swirling beneath. It is feasible because I'm willing to fight for it. I believe our strength lies in our bond with the community. That's not just a concept, it's a tangible asset. We can redesign the diner as the go-to destination for people seeking authenticity. Jack's eyes narrowed in focus. Authenticity is fantastic, but it's the numbers that will matter to investors. You have to think like them. An uncomfortable knot formed in her stomach. He was right, she had to sneak past the fortress of traditional metrics without losing sight of her inherent value. She wanted to reach deep and bring forth the stakes she felt. What if I show you a detailed projection? I'll map it out, demonstrating how our local engagement can directly impact revenue, mastering the balance between community roots and corporate requirements. The idea vibrated through her, gaining momentum. Each potential partnership with local businesses, each marketing strategy, resonated like a heartbeat. And if, through adaptation, we find that certain initiatives aren't working, we can apply different strategies to fill the gaps like workshops or seasonal features that align with customer trends. Jack appeared thoughtful, and she seized the moment. Confidence surged, fueling her ability to see this vision beneath the practicalities. My goal isn't to solely grow a diner, it's to create a lifestyle brand people are passionate about. I refuse to dismiss the community I've come to know so intimately. It's everything we express through our food and touch. Finally, he leaned in, an openness emerging in his demeanor that hadn't been there moments before. That's the spirit I was hoping to see, he acknowledged softly. But understand that the path will be riddled with inevitable setbacks. You'll have to confront disappointments head-on. Her heart swelled at his acknowledgement. Yet, a lingering question hung heavily in her mind: what if the commitment required was more than she was prepared to deliver? Would she find the resolve through disappointment, and how many times could she endure? Before she faltered, Sarah searched Jack's face, reading the unspoken potential lingering there. This was a crossroads, a moment that could yield new heights or devastating lows. She could sense the invisible threads of their futures intertwining. The truth thrummed within her: success demanded risk, and here she was, on the edge of everything she had wanted. Are you willing to take that risk? She asked, her voice firm yet infused with hope, and as Jack contemplated, a silence stretched out, oxygen hanging heavily between their shared uncertainty and desire. Their next steps were uncertain, but the resolve to uncover the truth of possibility had begun. What lay ahead could either bond them tightly or unravel everything they had considered. The silence lingered, thick and tangible, pulling Sarah in every direction. The weight of Jack's contemplation pressed against her, a silent challenge demanding her to push harder. The notion of risk that had seemed invigorating moments ago now felt perilous. She couldn't allow fear to undermine her momentum. Jack finally broke the tension, his eyes sharp and calculating. You say you're ready to take risks, but risks without knowledge can lead to blind spots. Can you share a specific example of how you've navigated setbacks before? Something that truly tests your mettle? The question reverberated through her, an unexpected pang tightening around her chest. She hesitated but then recalled a moment from her past, a time she felt vulnerable yet empowered. When I first worked in the diner, I made a mistake with an order that upset a regular customer. Rather than hide from it, I took the initiative to personally apologize and understand what went wrong. I asked for feedback, and it transformed that negative experience into a re-engagement, ultimately bringing that customer back even more loyal than before. A flicker of interest sparked in Jack's eyes. That's a compelling story. But what you did there was service recovery, not leading a business. You need to think on a broader level. What happens when a major initiative fails? How will you respond when it's more than just a disgruntled customer? The directness of his query made her stomach churn. Thoughts raced through her mind, grappling with the raw realities of entrepreneurial life. The stakes were different, landscape vast and rules murky. I've always believed that acknowledging mistakes leads to learning, she replied slowly, trying to ground her thoughts. As a leader, I think it's essential to cultivate a team culture where failure is not feared but embraced as part of growth. If an initiative fails, I de-engage with the team, analyze the data, and recalibrate our direction based on what we've learned. I see the strategic mindset there, Jack acknowledged, leaning back, considering her words. But that has to translate not just into thought but actionable execution. People in high-stakes situations will look to you for leadership under pressure. You'll have to inspire confidence through uncertainty. His gaze was penetrating, forcing her to recoil momentarily. Each word was a reminder of the chasm between her dreams and the gritty reality of leading an operation. But deep within, the embers of resolve sparked even brighter. Every moment of doubt could be dismantled through conviction and fortitude. What about you? Sarah challenged, a newfound assertiveness rising within her. When faced with setbacks, how did you ensure your vision remained intact? Because clearly, you've weathered storms. A surprising softness touched his features, almost reminiscent of shared understanding. Every entrepreneur faces moments of doubt, it's human. I learned that building a network of trusted advisors and mentors transformed my pathway. They helped reinforce ideas and provide insight that I couldn't see alone. She absorbed his insight, considering the strength that humility could wield. So if I build that network now, I can cultivate a safety net that prevents isolation when things get tough. That's a solid takeaway, he encouraged, a hint of a smile breaking across his lips. And remember, maintaining that network means being vulnerable and open with your ideas. They need to see your authenticity. A warmth flooded her. Clarity mixed with ambition, illuminating a vision. She understood now that authenticity wasn't just vested in the community she wanted to serve, it also extended to how she presented herself. Jack, if I commit, I want to be open and honest about this journey, even at the risk of showing weaknesses. I want to build real connections, not just transactional ones, she stated firmly. Jack cocked an eyebrow, impressed. Intriguing approach. Just be prepared for the times when being real isn't met with open arms. Culture can be a double-edged sword. Then I'll wield it, she replied boldly, a sense of purpose coalescing behind her words. I can't promise perfection, but I can assure that I'll be persistent. He nodded, a semblance of respect flashing across his gaze. You've taken a pivotal step. Be ready. Building something substantial from such grassroots origins won't come easy, but I sense you might just pull it off. The exchange invigorated her, but also instilled a growing urgency. Trust was being built, but the pressure remained unyielding. She sensed an impending test on the horizon, and the stakes seemed higher than ever. So, what's next? She inquired, a hint of eagerness coloring her tone. The real challenge begins now, Jack replied, eyes narrowing, voice low. All these ideas? Let us see if they can transform into tangible outcomes quickly. Prepare for our next meeting. I'll expect numbers and projections that can make investors pay close attention. His words ignited a rush of adrenaline, fear morphing into a purposeful drive. I'll be ready, she promised, determination flooding her voice. As their paths diverged, Sarah felt a pivotal shift within her. She was no longer merely spinning ideas. She was on the verge of a transformation, and her next actions would solidify whether she would thrive or falter. But just before she turned to leave, a sudden thought struck her. What if she miscalculated the extent of her own tenacity? The question lingered as she walked away, and Sarah knew that the foundation of her success teetered on the edge of clarity and doubt. The moment of truth was forthcoming, and uncertainty loomed. Would she rise to meet it, or would the weight of ambition crush her resolve? In the days that followed her conversation with Jack, Sarah immersed herself in research and preparation. The initial rush of adrenaline that had motivated her to embrace this challenge now transformed into an unwavering focus. She spent countless hours analyzing market trends and studying competitors. Each new data point fueled her determination, yet the underlying tremor of anxiety echoed louder and louder. Late one evening, seated in her cluttered workspace, Sarah felt the weight of impending deadlines pressing down on her. She scoured spreadsheets for insights, connecting numbers and projections into a cohesive story that could captivate investors. Logic whispered of possibility, yet a gnawing self-doubt lingered at the edges of her thoughts. What if her projections were overly optimistic? What if the narrative she crafted fell flat in front of Jack? With another cup of coffee in hand, Sarah wrestled with her apprehension. Reflecting on her past gave her clarity. She had navigated the treacherous emotional waters of disappointment before. The diner incident kept replaying in her mind, a personal reminder that vulnerability did not equate to failure. Still, steering a business toward success felt far steeper than correcting an order. What she needed was a reality check, not just numbers, but an insight that grounded her aspirations. In a fit of vulnerability, she called her friend Mia, who had a knack for spotting weaknesses and strengths with uncanny accuracy. Heading into that conversation, Sarah felt an unsettling blend of eagerness and reluctance. When Mia arrived, their banter provided a fleeting sense of normalcy. Yet, as they peeled back layers of Sarah's plan, obstacles emerged. "You need to identify your unique value proposition," Mia pressed. "What sets you apart from the rest? That's what investors want to know." "A unique offering," Sarah mused, the phrase washing over her. I thought it was my approach to authenticity and community involvement." Mia paused. "It's good, but is it enough? Investors will want something palpable: numbers, connections, and above all, clarity in your vision. If you can't clearly articulate what makes your approach different, they might dismiss you as another impassioned good intent." Crimson flush crept into Sarah's cheeks. The weight of Mia's words settled in the air between them, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths. This was not merely about ambition, it demanded a coherent strategy that broke through the noise. "Okay," Sarah finally said, feeling the resolve solidify within her. "I'll dig deeper. I'll assess my network. If I need partnerships or collaborations to enhance what I'm offering, I'll do it." Mia nodded, her expression affirming. "And don't forget about testing your ideas on a smaller scale. Gather feedback, adapt if necessary, it's all part of the journey." With renewed determination, Sarah shifted from passive planning to active execution. It felt daunting, but as she built lists of potential collaborators, ideas began to flourish. One name stood out, a former colleague now working in tech, someone who might align perfectly with her vision and provide keystone support. Just as she was about to finalize her outreach, a thought struck her: was that enough? Surely, a single collaboration wouldn't bolster her pitch sufficiently. Perhaps she needed more than just connections. She thought about Jack's words regarding authenticity. Her strength lay within embracing her own narrative as she built this entity. But how could she weave her past experiences and aspirations into something compelling? The next morning, fueled by determination, she began outlining her journey, the Waitress days, the challenges she faced, and the vision she aspired to create. She started assembling her pitch deck, embedding her story within the numerical projections. It flowed like a living entity, vibrant yet grounded in realism. Just as the morning light broke through the window, illuminating her workspace, the realization settled in: she was no longer a waitress seeking validation. She was solidifying her foundation, wielding the very essence of her experiences. As the clock ticked towards her meeting with Jack, a strange but familiar excitement surged within her. Could she truly balance authenticity with the razor-sharp expectations of the business world? With that lingering question echoing in her mind, Sarah steeled herself, knowing the moment of truth would soon arrive. Would she seize this new chapter, or succumb to the doubts lurking just beneath the surface? Sarah stood in front of her mirror, running her fingers along the edges of her pitch deck, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. For too long, she had let uncertainty dictate her progress. Now, she felt the electric pulse of determination coursing through her veins. It was time to confront not just Jack but her own insecurities. Nervous energy hung in the air as she adjusted her blazer, an armor against the skepticism she feared. Each minute that passed nudged her closer to the pivotal encounter. With an incredulous resolve, she recalled Mia's voice urging her to differentiate herself, to present not only the numbers but the compelling story behind them. The cafe where they had agreed to meet buzzed with activity, an ambience thick with the chatter of potential and ambition. As she approached the reserved table, she spotted Jack. He exuded confidence, his casual demeanor belying the weight of expectation that she felt crashing down on her shoulders. Sarah took a breath, reminding herself that she was no longer just a former waitress, she was the architect of her own ambition. "Hey there, Sarah," Jack said, offering a warm smile that momentarily eased her apprehension. "I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas." "Thanks for meeting with me," she replied, settling into the chair across from him. The initial conversation flowed easily as they discussed casual topics, but she felt the weight of silence creep in, signaling it was time to transition to her pitch. Drawing upon her neurology and her past, Sarah began, her voice steady but heart racing. She articulated the numbers: market share, growth potential, competitive landscape, but quickly interspersed her journey, weaving personal anecdotes that gave weight to the statistics. "I remember standing behind the diner counter, dreaming of a future beyond late-night shifts while taking orders. Every cup of coffee poured pushed me one step closer to my aspirations," she articulated with conviction, surprising herself with the depth of emotion she didn't know she could convey. Jack's brow furrowed with interest. As she elaborated on potential partnerships and the unique value proposition she had discovered through her research, she felt her narrative transform into something tangible. It wasn't just about selling a product. It was about sharing a vision rooted in her experiences. However, as she neared the end, doubt crept back in. Would he see the depth in her story or merely the ambitious facade it masked? Just as she was about to close, she recalled a particularly transformational moment, a conversation with a longtime diner patron who had encouraged her never to doubt her worth. "I wanted to create a space where people like me didn't just feel heard but valued," she concluded, looking earnestly into Jack's eyes. Silence enveloped them, the cafe chatter dissipating in her mind. Jack leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression overtaking his features. "It's clear you've put an incredible amount of thought into this," he finally said, breaking the hold of tension in the air. But Sarah's heart sank. She braced herself, preparing for a flood of critique. "But," Jack continued, "let us focus on your methods. How do you plan to deliver on that vision? How can we ensure that your emotional appeal translates into sustainable results?" Reflexively, Sarah's mind pivoted. While she had linked her personal narrative to the business proposal, she realized she needed to explore operational specifics further. A pointed exchange ensued, filled with strategic questions and answers that pushed her to think critically and robustly about execution. This was different. The discussion wasn't merely about passion, it was about pragmatism and foresight. As the conversation progressed, Sarah began to see possibilities beyond the numbers, unearthing innovative strategies that had shored up her past regrets. Yet, beneath the exhilaration of intellectual sparring, she sensed her own vulnerabilities simmering below the surface once more. With newfound clarity swirling in her thoughts, she maintained focus. When the chatter of the cafe shifted to lighter banters around them, Jack's piercing gaze brought her back to the moment. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, she embraced the challenge. "Let us revisit the market projections," Sarah said, a smirk creeping onto her face. "I think I have a few ideas that might just surprise you." With Jack's cautious approval lingering, and determination coursed through her. They might have begun with those emotional stakes, but now, she could merge heart and strategy into a singular force. In that decisive moment, Sarah understood that to stand boldly in front of an audience or investors, the real challenge lay ahead, proving her mettle in the face of skepticism, anchoring ambition with verifiable strategic intent. As she prepared to dive deeper into impending market analyses, a thought struck her: was she ready to stand her ground against potential adversaries who might dismiss her vision as mere nostalgia? A new chapter awaited, but one question loomed larger than all: what would she do if someone challenged her authenticity in the face of her ambitions? The air felt thick with anticipation as Sarah turned her focus back to Jack, the earlier warmth of their conversation replaced by a sharper tension. Here she was, at the precipice of transformation, ready to challenge both herself and her audience with her evolving vision. Yet, the underlying fear of rejection skulked in the corners of her mind. What if Jack's probing went deeper? What if he unveiled cracks in her plan that even she was unaware of? "Let us talk about the market projections, then," she said again, more firmly this time. The words tumbled out like a declaration. Jack nodded, his demeanor shifting from passive listener to critical evaluator, the spark of interest evident in his eyes. As Sarah compared her forecasts with emerging market trends, she began to feel a thrill that stemmed from deeper understanding rather than naivety. She was no longer merely a waitress recounting her past, she was a strategist, dissecting figures and presenting them as the very essence of her aspirations. In the next 3 years, she stated confidently, her voice rising above the din of the cafe, we can capture at least 20 of the market through targeted outreach and community building. Each figure she mentioned fortified her narrative, lending credibility to her ambitions that had previously felt like mere dreams. "You believe that?" Jack said, leaning forward, the skepticism melting away like morning frost. But his doubts weren't eliminated completely. "Can you explain how you would scale operations to meet that demand without oversaturating the market?" The question crystallized a challenge in Sarah's mind. She had to dig deeper now, revealing the scaffolding of her ideas and demonstrating her understanding of logistics. This was her juncture. She could either capitulate to discomfort or expand her vision. "It's about strategic partnerships," she began, her mind racing. "By collaborating with established brands, we leverage their reach while providing bespoke offerings that remain true to our core values." The images she conjured felt alive, a web of connections that shimmered with possibility. She could envision coffee shops as community hubs, drawing on her experiences and her customers' stories to build brand loyalty. Jack seemed genuinely interested, his expression shifting from one of evaluative inquiry to an engaging spark. "Interesting approach. But what about the funding? There are countless startups vying for the same partnerships. How do you mitigate that risk?" For a fleeting moment, doubts cascaded in, but as her instinct to protect her hard-earned vision arose, she countered swiftly. "I've learned that it's not merely about securing funding but aligning with investors who resonate with our mission, those who value authenticity over mere profit margins." She could feel her heartbeat sinking with her words, each syllable reinforcing her self-worth, but as she navigated this multifaceted discussion, new realizations bubbled to the surface. She was not simply talking numbers, she was crafting narratives to build trust and connection. If her history of serving coffee was about connections with customers, then her current venture transcended just business. Jack paused, his demeanor softening slightly. "You've got conviction, Sarah." But here it came. The hesitation lingered as she could almost sense his looming challenge. "What do you do if someone questions your credibility? How do you respond in a competitive environment where all they see is your past?" Sweat formed at her brow, but she felt the embers of her resolve ignite. "I would showcase the strengths I've cultivated through my past experiences," she declared. "It's not about alienating those who doubt me, I seek to transform skepticism into understanding. I invite criticism, as it sharpens my focus." As the words left her lips, she felt more empowered than ever. There was indeed skepticism, but also an unyielding spirit that thrummed within her, propelling her forward. "Sarah," Jack said, searching her eyes, "what is your plan if someone goes beyond skepticism and actively works against you? What if they attempt to undermine your credibility or mock your past?" His question stood as a specter before her, but one tinged with a hint of challenge she needed. What if opponents appeared on her path, people with the power to sway perceptions? The air thickened again, but this time Sarah felt grounded. Instead of shying away, I would confront that adversary directly. I've learned that avoidance doesn't yield results. Jack nodded, a glimmer of respect shining in his gaze as they lingered in the silence, each considering the implications of her statement. Sarah's heart raced. She realized she had not only unveiled a potential business plan but a blueprint for resilience. Let's talk about how you plan to protect your brand then, Jack urged, a newfound eagerness in his tone. Sarah's mind began to race with possibilities, but an underlying question gnawed at her. Had she truly grasped the depth of her own authenticity, or was she merely skimming the surface? What lay ahead was uncertain. The next phase of her journey beckoned with both intimidation and resolve. With newfound clarity, she felt poised for the battles ahead. Yet, somewhere within lurked shadows of doubt. What would she discover about her own authenticity when facing real opposition? The stage was set for the next confrontation. Weeks passed, and the rhythms of the diner and the business world began to intertwine seamlessly. Sarah sat in front of her laptop, her newfound pitch deck glowing with purpose. A fresh confidence radiated from her. This time, she was not merely seeking approval. She was ready to assert herself a businesswoman, a strategist, a woman who had conquered doubts that once seemed insurmountable. Jack, impressed by her passion at the last meeting, had agreed to a follow-up. They would discuss performance metrics, dive deep into the intricacies of costs versus anticipated profits, and ultimately, evaluate the potential partnership. This wasn't just another meeting, it felt monumental. With each keystroke, Sarah reinforced her belief in the possibility of success, the whisper of her ambition now an undeniable roar. As she meticulously crafted her plan, the realities of executing a dream unfolded. Each aspect of her proposal was grounded in substantial research and personal experience. She reached out to suppliers she had developed relations with, gathering endorsements that would support her vision. She also contacted a graphic designer to develop branding materials, focusing on a strong community identity. Gone were the days of merely serving coffee. She was crafting a narrative that would resonate not only with local patrons but also prospective investors. On the day of the pitch, Sarah donned her power suit, the armor she had envisioned throughout her journey. A twinge of nerves ignited in her stomach, yet they felt distinctly different now. Each breath carried the weight of preparation. The anticipation of presenting her vision electrified her, and the fear that had once loomed over her began to transform into a surge of empowerment. As Sarah sat across from Jack in the boardroom, she felt an unshakable sense of purpose. "Thank you for this opportunity," she began, her voice steady. "Today, I'm here to share a solid business plan built on what I've learned in the past few weeks, not just about the diner, but about the people it represents." As she delved into budget forecasts, operational strategies, and marketing plans, Jack's skeptical facade began to soften. Her projections showcased not only growth potential but also a carefully defined path prepared through her own lived experiences and community engagement. This was no longer about proving herself to someone who had laughed at her. This was about asserting her identity in the business landscape. When she reached the section on risk management, Jack leaned forward, intrigued. "You've clearly done your homework. It's evident this is more than just numbers for you. But how do you navigate backlash from competitors?" With clarity, Sarah explained her approach to transparent communication, engagement tactics, and commitment to authentic relationships, especially when faced with deterrence. "I've learned that the best response to challenge is education and showcasing my resolve. Adversity can be a stepping stone for deeper connections with customers if approached right." The excitement in Jack's eyes transformed into genuine interest. "You've shown real growth, Sarah. If you continue down this path, I believe you can draw not just customers, but also fill an emotional gap in this market." With each slide she flipped through, her case tightened, the correlation between her narrative and the business strategy growing unmistakably clear. When she finished, a moment of silence enveloped them. Jack looked at her, a blend of skepticism and admiration in his gaze. "I want to propose moving forward with a pilot program. Let's test some of these concepts and see how they resonate with our target demographics." A wave of exhilaration crashed over Sarah. She had done it. The laughter that once belittled her ambitions became the backdrop for a powerful affirmation of her transformation. "Will I be able to share responsibility on this journey?" she asked. "Absolutely. This is your vision. Your leadership will guide us," Jack confirmed. With the details of their collaboration cemented in conversation, Sarah felt an unshakable confidence solidify within her. She had achieved what had once seemed impossible. She had turned mockery into respect, dreams into action, and fear into a tangible framework for success. As she walked out of the boardroom, the sunlight beamed down, illuminating her path with promise. This was her moment, not just as a waitress with aspirations, but as a competent leader, ready to take her place in the world. She had shattered limitations, not by escaping the diner's confines, but by redefining them on her own terms. In the days and months to follow, Sarah transformed the diner into a local beacon, proving that ambition fueled by authenticity and resilience could create not only a thriving business but also a community connection that lasted far beyond mere transactions. This was her journey, and she owned it. It's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire your own journey of overcoming. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show support for powerful narratives. Comment below your reactions and theories about how stories can transform lives, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of perseverance. Your support matters.